Hello, this is Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique. I'm back right now and want to do a quick little tutorial to wrap up some of the different aspects of square stitch, which if you've been following along on my channel, I'm working on a series of videos that will help us to perfect some of the different jewelry making techniques. And this month I've been focusing on square stitch and wire simple loops, and then also the wire wrapped loops, and just some basic wire working techniques. I showed you guys how you can do square stitch using a variety of beads to make a beautiful piece of jewelry. And then my most recent one is how to do the wire wrapped loop, and in that I showed you guys how to create these beautiful beaded links for the bracelet, and this is how the bracelet wound up coming out. And I made my own little finding clasp here at the end of it. And here's the matching earrings, and you can actually see how to make this complete earring on the PDF file I have available on the Alluring Bead Boutique, which actually shows you how to create this cute little head pin with the spiral at the end of it. But I also have a video out that I did closer towards Christmas on making these cute little components here out of wire, and I'm just going to bring that up basically because I want to show you what I'm going to be working on today. So I made these little copper earrings using the same style of component, only I only used one wrapped loop on these little earring components, and I hung these little beads down here in the layers like that. And I made these cute little ear findings and added the little matching bead here. And so I want to make a bracelet that goes along with these earrings. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get started on some square stitch. And we're going to do a project using these cute little, they're little delicate beads. And I'm not sure of the exact color because they were a free gift. But I will look it up and I will try to have the color for you in the information box below. So if you want to follow along, grab out some 11 Delicas and we'll get started. And also today, one of the main things I want to show you is how to add thread into a square stitch project and how to end thread in a square stitch project. So those are some of the goals I want to accomplish in this video. So I'm going to get ready to start my little bracelet and I'll be right back. All right, now I am back, and my earrings are really, really dainty. So I want my bracelet to also be dainty. So I'm only going to make the width of my bracelet 7 beads wide of these little delicas. And I picked up my first 7 and I've let them fall down and brush up against the stop bead. I like to work back towards myself on this stitch, so I'm going to put my thumb right here to hold these beads against the needle, or excuse me, my thumbnail against the beads to hold them close to the stop bead, and my stop bead's going to be facing away from me. So if you're not familiar with square stitch, you can jump over to the video. The link is in the little eye up here in the right corner and also down below on how to get started with square stitch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick up one of our delicas. We're going to come back through that last delica we picked up that's closest to my fingernail here, and we're going to take the needle and come back through it towards ourselves. And I'm going to keep my thumbnail there in position as I pull that bead into place. And once I pull it into place, it should sit nicely beside the original bead on row 1. And you will have to manipulate just a little bit as you work your first few rows. So we want it to sit there side by side like that. So now I'm coming out of this bead on row 1. I need to go back through that bead I just added in the opposite direction away from myself and pull. And this is what I have. And I'm just going to add my beads in that exact same manner until I get all 7 of them added. So I'm coming out of the top of my new bead here. I've got a bead picked up. I'm going to go down that very next bead of row 1. And if you want, you can also go through the first bead, which my needle went through there. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through both of them. And I'm going to pull. And that'll help to stabilize my work just a little bit better. I'm going to get my bead into position. And now because I went through both beads, I have to go up through both beads that on row 2 here. And pull my thread. Excuse me. And I'm just going to keep working like that. I'm going to pick up my next bead. I'm going to come down through the next bead of row 1, which is that third one from the end, towards myself, pull it through. And once my bead is in position, I'm going to come back up through that new bead away from myself. And I'm going to make sure my thread slides underneath those 2 beads where I'm currently working. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add my next 4 beads, and I'll come back and we'll do our reinforcement. So here I am, and I'm back, and I have added my last bead to row 2. My thread is exiting here at the top of row 2, and I want to reinforce these rows. As if you'll remember in my initial video on the basics of square stitch, this reinforcing of the rows is a vital step towards not only strengthening the work, but it will help you to straighten out your rows. And these little delicas work great as far as keeping your rows really nice looking, but you want to make sure you don't skip this step. All right, so what I'm doing, my thread is exiting here, the top bead of row 2. I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go down through all 7 beads of row 1. I'm going to flip it over like this, just to make sure that I don't see any needle and that I'm going through all the beads and not skipping any. And I'm going to pull that on through. And now I need to get back into position where I started from, so I'll need to take my needle and go up through all these beads of row 2. And once again, you can flip your work over like this just to make sure that you're not skipping any before you pull your needle and thread all the way through. And there's what you should have. And then I like to continue on working towards myself, so I just flip my work over. I pick up my next bead, which is the first bead of row 3, and then I just start working back towards myself with that very bottom bead down here near the stop bead, but on row 2. And repeat the same steps for square stitch. Pull the bead down into position so it sits nicely beside the bead next to it. Then take your needle and come back up through that new bead on row 3 to get into position for adding your next bead. And so let me do just one more here for you guys. Pick up your bead, come down through the very next bead on row 2, the previous row. Pull your bead and manipulate it into position. Then pass up through just that second bead away from yourself, making sure that your thread falls in between that intersection right there. If you need to cinch your beads closer to the previous rows, pull your thread back across like this, and it will tighten your rows up. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and you guys can pause me now, jump back over to the beginning basics if you need to, and get yourself a pretty good strip of square stitch done. And I'm going to come back when I need to end and add thread, and I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, so I am back, and I have 14 rows of my square stitch, and each row contains the 7 beads. So I did a little bead count, and I'm trying to determine what kind of a bracelet I really want to make. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys how you would end off this thread and with this piece, because basically I've decided I'm going to make several little pieces of square stitch just like this. This one is really close to 1 inch long. If I added another 2 rows of beads, because I want to have an even number in my piece, it would actually put it over an inch, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to stop right here, and let me just show you how you weave your thread off. So my thread, here's my stop bead, my tail thread. My working thread is exiting here at the bottom on the very last row I added. So in order to weave my thread off, I need to follow my thread paths back through this work, and I need to weave in such a fashion that I reverse direction a few times in order to make sure my thread is secure. Now, you can just weave straight through all of the beads on a row and weave back and forth that way. And that's one way you can do it if you're really new to it, and that's fine. You can do that. You would basically just want to weave all the way to the end, reverse direction, down the next row this way or the next row that way, and then come back through the same row again and a couple of times like that so that you would have the thread really secure. But I'm going to do this and show you how you do it with just a few beads out of your row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up. I'm coming out of the bottom of row 14, so I'm going to go up 2 beads on row 13 right there. And I'm going to pull my thread all the way through. Then I'm going to come down 2 beads on row 12, back towards the same edge where my thread was exiting here at the bottom. And it's a little tough to see in this light, but right there. And when I pull, I'm going to make sure that my thread sucks all the way into that intersection so that I don't have a lot of thread showing here in my work. Now I'm going to go up on row 11, and this time I'm going to go up about halfway, so I'm going to go up through 4 beads. That'll be on row 12, I guess. Pull my thread, nice and snug, but not really super tight. So here I am exiting from this bead. I'm going to scoot over to a row on either side. In this instance, I'm going to keep working back towards my stop bead. And I'm going to work back down towards the bottom of my work. And I'm only going to go down 2 beads this time. If I can get my needle in, folks, that would be great. So now I'm going to come down those 2 beads. Because now I want to do a loop-de-loop around so I know that my thread is nice and snug in these beads. So that means I'm going to come back up through the row I was just in, and I'm going to come through 2 beads again. Actually, I'm going to go up about 3 beads this time. Maybe 4. There, 4. So here you see my threads exiting right here. So I'm going up the bead corresponds to it, back in this direction to the left, and I'm going to go up a few more beads. When I pull, I snug the thread in. So now my thread is exiting up here. So I'm going to come down some beads right next door and pick a couple of beads. You can see where my working thread is exiting here, going down the bead right beside of it. Pull my thread in. I'm going to come back up the bead right beside where I'm exiting. This time I'm going to go all the way up to the top. Now I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. And this time I'm going to come down several beads. So I'm going to try to get down 5 beads like that. And now I'm going to do another loop around. So I'm exiting right here. I'm going to go up the beads right here beside. Hopefully get just through a couple like that. Pull my thread. Come back down right where the row I was in. And the bead right next door to the one my working thread is exiting. I'm going to come all the way down. So you can see a little bit of thread there. So I just pulled tight to snug it on in. And now I'm at the bottom. So now I'm just going to go through all of my beads. Back towards the stop bead here, the next row over. And I'll come back down the previous row, but I'm going to come out in the middle of the beadwork. So I'm coming down about 3 or 4 beads there. Looks like 4 to me. And this time when I pull through, my thread is nice and secure in this beadwork, so I can cut this thread right there. So I take my scissors, I'm going to pull tightly so that when I cut, any little piece of tail will pop right back into the beads. All right, that's weaving off your thread. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for a little bit, and I am going to go ahead and start another strip of beadwork identical to this one. And I don't have a lot of thread left on my needle, so I know that I'm going to wind up having to add some thread. So when I get to that point, I'm going to come back and we'll show you how to add new thread. If you want, you can continue on with your strip to the desired length that you want it, or if you would like to follow along with my grandiose idea, which I'm not completely positive how I'm going to finish the whole thing off. The basic point of this video is to show you guys how to add and end thread. You can go ahead and make a couple of strips if you want. Just do whatever turns you on, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I went ahead and got started on my next little strip here. And I was able to get a few rows on, and I was able to get part of a row here on. So what I did was I wove back through my beadwork, just like I showed you, to weave the thread off. So now I need to get this new thread added on. So I've already strung on about 1 yard of my fire line onto my needle. And we're going to weave on just the same way that we weave off, but we want to make sure that we come out exiting this bead in this direction so that we can continue adding on to this row. So it doesn't matter where I start. I can pick anywhere I want to. I'm just going to pick maybe row 4 here, and I'm going to come up through 4 or 5 of my beads, just like that. I'm going to pull through all of my thread, and I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a tail. It doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to hold on to. So now I need to weave my thread in. So here I am exiting this bead. I'm going to do a roundabout, is what I call it, where I come back down through the bead right next door in the row to the right or left. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to come down, and I'm going to come down 2 beads. Make sure you don't pull your tail thread out. Then I'm going to go right back into that row where I originally started from here, and I'm going to start at the bead that's right next door to the bead I'm currently exiting. So you can see here, let me move the tail thread. Here's my working thread. So I'm going to go up through those beads, and I'm going to go all the way to the end of my beadwork. So that way I've went all the way around in a circle around those 4 beads one time. I'm going to pull nice and snug without making sure not to pull my tail thread through. And now I'm going to start working my way to the left. So I'm going to come down the row towards the left here. And I'm going to come down through some beads. And I wound up coming through 6 of my beads. So I'm going to go ahead and come through and pull my thread. And I'm going to move my tail thread back out of the way here. So now I'm exiting this bead 1 up from my bottom edge. So I want to come up and do another roundabout here. I'm going to go up through the beads going on the row to the left. The bead right next door to where my thread is exiting. Here's my thread exiting there. So I'm going up through that bead right next door, and I'm moving up through several of my beads. I'm going to pull that through and hide that thread into the intersection. Nice and secure. Now I can work my way down and up to exit the bead that I need to. So here's where my thread is exiting. So now I can come down the bead right next door, and this time I'm going to come through all of my beads to the bottom of my beadwork, pull that through. Snug my thread in between the beads, nice and secure so you can't see it. And now I can just come up through these 4 beads on my outer edge here, and I can continue on adding beads to this row. And what I would do is I'm going to go ahead and finish this row and probably just go ahead and finish my strip, and then I will end it. I'll just cut this end off. But I'm going to leave it there for right now because I want to make sure that my beadwork stays nice and secure until I can get some beads added and put a little more tension onto my working thread. So I will just pick up my next bead and continue on square stitching those beads of this next row that I'm working on. Get into position before I add my next bead. Just like that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish my strip out till it's equal with the one I already have created. Then I'm going to come back and we're going to have a little discussion for the end of the video. All right, so I've got my second little strip of 14 rows made here. And I just wanted to touch base with you on why I put an even number of rows. Because I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with this particular design yet. I thought I was just going to make a long strip bracelet, but as it turned out, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I got these for free from when I made an order with Fusion. And I don't think that I would have enough. I've counted them out, and I actually wouldn't have enough to make up but like 4 of these sections, which would come out to right at a little under 4 inches. So that's not going to work for a bracelet that way without doing something additional. But so if I were to want to embellish this outside edge, as I did on the bracelet with the slider I showed you in the other video, if you'll give me just a moment, let me grab that. You can see on this bracelet how I embellished the outside edge of this square stitch band. You'll need an even number of rows if you were going to do as I did here, which was to put 3 15-ohs on my needle between each row of beads on the going this way and then back with the other side. So that's one reason I went ahead and just made even number of rows right now. If I were to change my mind later, it's really easy to add in like I showed you earlier, to add a thread, and I could change that to an odd number of rows if I wanted to. It's not that big of a deal. It's a lot easier to add a row than it is to take one off. Before I leave, I wanted to just show you this other bracelet I made using square stitch. I think it just came out so beautifully. Check that out. If you remember on my previous video when I showed you that I was making these little sections here, which were 3 rows wide for the outside edge of a different bracelet, I actually made 7 of these little sections here, and then I put them together with some rondelles and some 15-oh seed beads. And look how beautiful that came out. I think that's a really pretty bracelet. All right, folks, so that is it for now. I do want to mention that I'm pretty much about to wrap it up with square stitch. When I finish this design idea out, I may come back to it and show you guys how I embellish on that, or what I did with it. I might do a pattern. I'm just not really sure yet where I'm going to go with this, but I really want to go ahead and start moving on to some other techniques. If you'll have noticed on my channel, I'm also doing a few of the basic wire working techniques videos, and I'm going to have some PDFs for all of that available on the website too. By the end of this week, I hope to have all of that particular stuff wrapped up, and I'm going to try to go ahead and finish up on square stitch, because I'm really wanting to do, to move onwards and get onto a couple of project videos before the end of the month. But I have a lot of other things that I work on, like my Skillshare channel and my website. And, just basic back office stuff for my business. All right, folks, well, that is it. I want to thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Head over to the alluringbeadboutique.com and subscribe to the Bead Mat newsletter and my blog. Going to be a lot of great things coming to the website this year for subscribers only. And there's a lot of great discounts that you get each month as well on patterns, PDFs, and actually on jewelry as well. And make sure you guys follow me on social media. Well, that's it now. You guys have a great day. This is Dee for the Alluring Bead Boutique signing off.